have somebody here already. Well, of course, I'm doing the setup with the laptop again for the chat. So let me make sure that this is catching it because it seems to take some time for some reason before it gets up. I'm not sure what that reason is, but we're going to try to find out. Okay, it looks like it's working. All righty. Well, that's good. So I'm going to bring that up. And looks like we're up and running. That happened faster this time. Remember last time it took a few minutes. So great. We're 5 by 5. Everything's going good. I'm happy. All right. All right. Now, today is February 7th, 2023. And I want you to see something here. So I noticed last time people were still accusing me. Not that I take accusations too seriously, but I've got my apple cider vinegar again. Okay, I have some protein drinks I use too, but this is my real health drink right here. Okay, apple cider vinegar, organic, with the mother, as I was explaining the other day. So I'm gonna take a sip of that. Really tangy. Now, I'm gonna show you this. This is my scotch. You see the difference? Yeah, this is apple cider vinegar. It's about, I put about 2 tablespoons in this tumbler, and then I add filtered water to it. So it would not look, even if it was just straight apple cider vinegar, it wouldn't look like this. But why do I have both of these? Because when I finish this, and if I finish it before this live stream is done, I'm going to start sipping on this. You might say, wow, what's that going to do to your stomach? That's a good question. I'm going to find out. uh, Gastrointestinal distress, yeah, maybe, but it's all good stuff. This stuff is really good for you. So let me drink just a little bit of this so we get a chance for people to get in here. 27 or yeah, two teaspoons, yeah, 2 teaspoons or 2 tablespoons full. Yeah, that's right. Or proof, yeah, that's good. U.S. Macallan scotches. I like Macallan. Yeah, it's not a U.S. though. All scotches are from Scotch. If it's a real Scotch, or if it has the label Scotch on it, it has to be from Scotland. It's some international law that Scotland was able to get out there. So, yeah, it's Tuesday. I thought I'd better, especially after what I've thrown at all you folks over the last little while. I figured I owed you a little time to peruse some of the questions that might be lingering, and I wanted to address one thing in particular. I could address a lot of things, but I'm going to try to stay away from doing any preaching today. Try to get away from any pontificating and those types of things, and just try to answer questions with the exception of one thing that I do want to address on a question that I've seen come up several times, and I'm going to do that. I'll definitely approach that one, and you'll find out what that is here shortly. Well, it looks like everything's up and running pretty good. What's your blood type? Zero positive. Mm-hmm. O positive. Right. Why do you ask? That's from Christy. What's my blood type? O positive. And yes, I'm pure blood. Okay. I don't have any of that stuff that's been put into people over the last few years. Don't have any of that. Maker's Mark is good. Yeah, who said that? Darth Zella. Zella? Yeah, I like Maker's Mark. I do. Maker's Mark, Woodford's, they're still in the reasonable cost range. Maker's Mark, Woodford's, like I said. Angel's Envy kind of gets up a little high in the price. It's about another maybe $25 for a 750 milliliter compared more than the Maker's Mark and the Woodfords. But man, it is good stuff. But I'm not a bourbon guy. Okay, I mean I can take it, but I really like Scotch. Macallan is good. I really like that. Of course, I have a real soft spot for Dalmore 12. but I also like Glenfiddich 12, Glenfiddich 18, Glenfiddich 15. You get the idea. Even Glenmorangie, I even like that. And there are others, but you get the idea. But this is my health drink here, and this is again organic apple cider vinegar with the mother, 2 tablespoons in filtered water. Okay, like I say, if I finish this before we're done here, I'll switch to the scotch. All right. Okay. In the description box below, why do I call this Run Don't Walk? Well, I think there was a movie that was called Run Don't Walk to, let's see, yeah, Run Don't Walk to Walk Don't Run. I think that was the name. This is years ago. But something came up today, and I've been watching. Again, I'm not a financial guy. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just telling you what came up today. And I've been watching this building over the last little while, and I've seen some people talking about it. I'm not telling you what to do about it. I just want to make you aware because this is serious. In the description box below is a link to the redacted. All right. And they did a report today that I think you need to see. You can watch the whole program if you want, but the link for the whole show is in there. Well, they do the first like 2 or 3 reports on YouTube, and then they switch over to Rumble. But the one you need to see, but you need to see all of them. But the one I'm concerned about with what this video is oriented towards is in the first story on the financial situation. So when you click on that link, just fast forward it to where they come on, because they have this really long introduction that goes like for 20 or 30 minutes. And what I think why they do that is to make sure that everything is up and running before they go to the live show. But whatever reason, you just go all the way through that. It's a bunch of clips from different things that have happened in the news from like the 60s to the present. So you just fast forward to that, get to their first, where they go live, where you can see them, and from there, listen to the story about the financial situation. That's I'm kind of hiding what I'm saying here, and you'll see why. There's probably not a problem with it, but I don't want anybody to think I'm giving financial advice, because I am not a financial whiz. Certainly not licensed or anything like that. Hey, how you doing, BP Earthwatch? I appreciate you being here. You know, I really thought that maybe I chased a lot of you away after the last few. Jesse puts up with me, and he keeps coming back. So does Liza Jean, and I see Felicia on here from time to time. Kay Smalls, I haven't seen in a while. These are all my moderators, of course, and I consider them friends. But I know I'm way out in the Never Never Land. At least I appear that way to a lot of people. Probably not so much to Jesse, because he's studied a lot of these things too. But as you can tell from the last one, I've really gone into some really depth on this stuff. Yeah, I appreciate that, Jesse. I feel the same way. Okay, about being a brother, I appreciate that. So in the description box, again, go see the Morris's report on Redacted. On the financial situation, and basically what it is, I can kind of give you a little bit without getting into too much detail here. It's talking about the bail-ins that are now happening. They're happening in Europe, they're happening in Africa, and they're happening here in the United States in 2 particular banks right now. It's not a big thing going on. If you don't know what a bail-in is, you know, the government, like in 2008, and then again in about 2020, somewhere in there, the banks ran out of money, right? And so the government came in and bailed them out, a bailout with the government, infusion, which is still wrong, because it's just wrong. The banks are too big to fail, they say, and they're really the source of so many of our problems in the world. But at any rate, of course, the Congress is supposed to coin money, right? Only Congress. But like everything else Congress does, they forked it out to everybody else, and then that way our representatives aren't protecting us. But at any rate, so there's the bailouts where the government gives money, but then, and this is turned to be legal, and it's in your terms of service in many of your bank accounts, not so much in like credit unions or things like that. I don't think, but in the banks, there's new information there, and they made it legal. Congress let them do it. They're called bail-ins. When you put your money in the bank, it's the banks, and they can take it anytime they want. And there are things happening right now that you need to know about to get ready for it. I'm not telling you how to get ready for it. Uh, Frankly, I don't know, because this thing is going to be so pervasive. But at least go listen to it. I think that the presentation on the financial situation that they give, which is the first report, it's probably 15 minutes long. It's not real long, but they give you a lot of information. They have inside video from the FDIC meeting where they're admitting that they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes and take advantage of you and only help the rich people. I mean, I'm serious. This is actual footage from somebody who was inside and wanted to get this out to us. So please go look at that. I think it's probably something really important for you. Okay, let me think. You believe Kleck? Well, good for you. I'm glad somebody believes Kleck. I don't think you'll find any in my house. I think you hit at him with the golem with us, huh? Okay. He's off my radar pretty much. The only reason why I ever addressed him is because of some people that could be hurt by some of the things that were said there. So that's the reason why I did that. Okay, what two banks so far? Well, I can tell you that Bank of America and Wells Fargo. Okay, here in the U.S., in Europe and in Africa, maybe I didn't hear any reports from South America, but definitely in Europe and South Africa, those things. Nigeria, I think, was the country that was having the problem. Okay, Brooke 329. I don't want to say people are wrong across the board. I don't want to overgeneralize even with him. Anybody. I mean, I'm wrong on things. We all, if we're being honest, we're searching and we're going to make little errors in our search. The thing is that we have to be able to do is repent of our error and make sure that we're still hungering and thirsting after righteousness and after the truth. But anything that puts down the man-woman relationship, as I say, here I go again, the man-woman relationship or the God created us male and female, that's not evil. That's not evil. It's in God's image, and I proved it. Obviously, these people that talk like that individual don't understand Hebrew the way they think they do, and whatever. I don't care. I'm giving you my take on it, and I think if you're reasonable, if you look at what I've presented, you'll know that I know what I'm talking about. I will not. That's one thing I won't do because they're trying to destroy our men, woman, male, female, and children in this whole process. Whether they realize they're doing it or not, that's what they are. They're in the same situation of causing that destruction, and that's why I got upset. Okay, and I just won't put up with it. Nobody's going to tell me that my wife was evil because she was a woman, a female, and nobody's going to tell me that my kids are. Okay, and I'm not going to put up with it. Okay, because I know better. I've gotten the word from the big man myself. Okay. That ain't the truth. The truth is, this is a gift that's given to us. And yes, we're in a trial period here. I'm getting upset about it again, aren't I? This is a gift. This is to see if we will do the righteous judgment in our lives, do righteously. And yes, it is the male-female relationship, and it was from the beginning. It was before we came here, while we're here, and after we leave. But how we relate to each other after we leave depends upon how we do here. Fallen angels, whole different story. And I'm going to address that issue. Remind me, hopefully you'll remind me, because somebody, I think it was Remnant Seed last time, or one of the other people on there, that feel very strongly, obviously, about what I'm saying on this marriage thing. Against Jesus being married, and that's fine. I'm not forcing it down your throat. I'm saying, things don't make sense. They don't make sense. But at any rate, there was a question about that, Jesus wouldn't have gotten married because he wouldn't be like the fallen angels and come here and get a wife. That's not what happened. He took upon himself the seed of Abraham, and I'm kind of talking about it before I wanted to. But at any rate, no, we're not the fallen angels. Okay? Okay. All right, sick in the head. Who? Jesus wasn't married. Gina, I've already given the evidence for that. I'm going to tell some other things later. That's not what I'm here for right now. We're going to do some other stuff. But, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. Okay, you're absolutely 100% wrong. You're in the wrong world. You're believing the wrong people because they are destroying you and your family. Okay? I'm just going to leave it at that. We'll address it again later. I don't want to be here on that all night. Take a sip. No, not the cider vinegar. No. I got to finish this first. Trust me. I'm not. This isn't going to be a spiritual discussion other than one thing that I mentioned earlier on the fallen angels thing and Jesus, not being just because he would take a life doesn't mean that he's violating what the what the fallen angels is. No, it's a totally different situation. But at any rate, I don't want to drink tonight. Okay, until I get done with some of this. All right. All right. What I will do is for all of you, like this individual who just said there a minute ago. Let's see, how did that go? It's frustrating. There we are. Let's see, the person, who was that? Gina W. And all of you people that feel like Gina W. does, that's fine. Then don't get married because you're not following Jesus' example. So don't get married. And if you have, go to God and beg him for forgiveness for that you violated your estate here and you should have stayed celibate like Jesus taught you to. Then I'm going to show you something. I brought this up before. A lot of people that follow me know that I have a lot of respect for Dr. Robert Eisenman. Dr. Robert Eisenman is a hero. The Bibliothèque École and Nationale and the Israeli Antiquities authorities, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, tried to hide them from you so that you wouldn't be able to figure out the things that the traditionalists were telling you happened in the first century happened before the first century, didn't, that they happened in the first century. In other words, he got the Dead Sea Scrolls out so that you could look at them and judge for yourself, however you want to view it. If you want to know, I mean, this is a thick book. Look at that. It's, how many pages is this thing? Not including the index. It's like almost 1,000 pages. Okay? 963 pages. And then there are a bunch of other research materials in there. This is a hunk of thing to get through, and it's scholarly. It's part of PhD work. Okay? I had to work on this in my training. I'll just put it that way. Okay? Get online and buy this book, James, the Brother of Jesus. Eisenman does not say that Jesus was married, so you don't have to worry about that. He even says that James was never married, and I maintain that that's incorrect. He's basing that on what Josephus said about a guy by the name of Bannus, and because of what Jesus said, and some of the early church fathers understood that Bannus was James. They all said, "Oh yeah, James was celibate too." No, he was not, and neither was Jesus. And there are reasons for that I've talked about infinitum in the religion series and Eisenman series that I've done. But this isn't going to talk about that. So you don't have to worry about getting this saying, I don't want to learn about Jesus being married. No. What you're going to learn about in here is the history of what happened, because historical analysis and textual analysis and a look at what the Bible really is, and Eisenman even admits on the Old Testament, and he's Jewish, you need to get this and read it. And yes, it's going to be a heck of a read. I think Walter got it. Walter, I doubt that he's here. Yo, you are here, Walter. Yeah, you got it. And Walter, you got to be careful of those Twitter uploads. And you know what I'm talking about, okay? Tone it down a little bit. Tone it down. My golly, man. You know, I understand you're being upset and angry, but man, you know, don't be scaring the crap out of people, okay? That's what you're doing. And I'm just telling you that publicly because I think a lot of people see your stuff. I appreciate you. I appreciate your music, Walter. I appreciate the fact that you've done things like studying James, the Brother of Jesus, and gotten the Strongs and the Hebrew, English, Greek, like interlinear Bible, all that stuff. You know, it's great. It's great. Yeah, you know, knives and guns and telling people how you're going to take them out and stuff like that. It's just not cool. All right, I like you, guy. You're okay. Just want to help you out so that you kind of watch yourself there, because it can come back and bite you in the ass. Okay. Yeah, that's right, Jesse. Paul had James killed so Paul could take over. That's true. I've talked about it in my Eisenman and Religion series. There's a little more to it that he wasn't there. Well, there's a question as to whether he was actually there when James was stoned. But the story of Stephen being stoned is actually the story of and Paul admits that he was there and held the young man's cloak when he was stoned. Well, that's just a retelling of the James stoning story, and Paul did have a part in it. Okay, but you'll see more about that when you read Eisenman, and you go over my Eisenman series and read my book. The Crimson Thread doesn't get to Paul. I was going to write a sequel to that. In the book, I even say that there are going to be sequels, but because my viewpoint on that is scholarly and it's so much different than either the scholars want to admit, because they remember these educational institutions and the scholars and all these people, they get money for writing, they get money for what they do, and the people that pay them expect their product to support the corporate positions or the institution's positions. Eisenman went out on a line for what he did. He had to do that. Fortunately, I guess most of what, and I don't know how he exactly financed it, but when I read his books, I knew that he was going out on a limb. He wasn't getting the money from all these, traditional, like the Ecole, the Bibliothèque Nationale, the Israeli Antiquities Authorities, or some church. He got that funding in some other way, because he would not have said what he said, because the institutions wouldn't have liked it. So he doesn't have that dog in that fight. However, he is Jewish, and he has some other ideas about that when he gets in there, you can tell. But I tell you that's okay. That's okay. You go in there and he's not he has a PhD in Middle Eastern studies and Hebrew and a couple of other things in that regard. He wasn't a trained historian. However, he did some of the historical research and work that he did is top level. You don't get any better than what he did. So get it and read it. It'll take you some time. Take your time. Don't feel like you got to get through it in one night, because you won't. It's almost 1,000 pages long, and a lot of that you're going to have to stop. The bibliography and all that, the index you can go through. You can check all of his work, see what he's talking about, and deal with it that way. And you'll be amazed. Okay, let me take another swig of this. Okay, I want to answer questions, so let's get to that. Yeah, that's right, Chris Hickson. He had a hard time getting access to the scrolls. It took years. He had to sue the Israeli Antiquities Authorities and the Bibliothèque Nationale and the Catholic Church and a bunch of other things. You're right, he did. He was a hero. He got out there. He put his life on the line, literally, because what he was going to prove with all of this was that the traditional concepts in the New Testament and the way it's been taught are not the way they are. And he proves it. You may not think so if you already have a predisposition to, total faith in what's presented in the New Testament. I had suspicions about Paul long before I read Eisenman, because of my own studies on my own. But when I got to Eisenman and I went for my Hebrew studies, because I already had some Hebrew studies at that time, through a rabbi, as a matter of fact, a Kabbalistic rabbi, I might add, I kind of knew what to look for. And so, Eisenman did a good job, and he put his life literally and his family on the line. Okay. Jesus was not a Jew. Technically, he was Jewish by nationality. Now, people will argue his genealogy and say that he came down from Judah, and thereby he was part of the tribe of Judah and all that. And I don't want to get into that here tonight. Maybe I will. He was a Jew by nationality. Okay, just like Daniel was a Babylonian by nationality. Okay, that's that kind of thing. It's just like, you may have descended from the Irish, but you're an American. Well, that's long gone. You're a United States citizen by nationality, right? Well, that's what Jesus was, and you're right. In my estimation, he was not Jewish. I think that entire story has been mishandled deliberately. He was accused of being, as I mentioned the other night, he was accused by the scribes and Pharisees of being a Samaritan. I don't think that was just a pejorative. I think they were serious. And there's indications, as I talked about, that the actual person, and this is why I have a problem with this Jesus Christ thing, this guy was actually the Teheb, or the Samaritan prophet that Josephus talks about. But anyway, yeah, I think he was an Ephraimite. I think he was. And the genealogies in Matthew and Luke don't match up. Why? One or the other is wrong, or they both are. Okay. Is it Mary, Judah, and Levite? There's a question about that. If you're talking about, I don't know if you're talking about, you're probably talking about his mother, right? You're probably talking about his mom, Mary. There's a question about that, whether or not she was Levitic, whether she was a Levite or not. But it doesn't say. But the hint is given to you by who her parents are. Now, in the case of John the Baptist, Elizabeth must have been a Levite, because we know that's the mother of John the Baptist. We know that her husband, Zacharias, was a priest. So, and the Levites could only marry Levites. So we know that Elizabeth was a Levite. Mary, it's kind of questionable. We're not really sure. But I would guess, under the circumstances, because the history of her being married to this Joseph guy, let's see what BP Earthwatch is saying here. Yeah, she was from the priest line. That's Jesse. I don't think that that's definitively provable, because they say Joseph was descended from David, right? I don't think that genealogy is right. And again, I go back to the problem in Luke and Matthew on the genealogies anyway. But yes, I think Mary, the mother of Jesus, was a Levite, and she was actually married to a guy by the name of Cleophas, who the New Testament tries to make an uncle of Jesus, or something like that. But there are other historical records that say, well, other correspondences that indicate that the father's name of Joseph was really because he was from the line of Joseph. But anyway, if you haven't read my book, The Crimson Thread, Jesse, you might want to do that, because it's kind of, I kind of get into that. Okay, narrows the path I'm following, Reg, saying, please forgive me. Well, so am I, Steve Brody. That's what you're here for. You're here to get, you can't go into a cow pasture and not get shit on your boots. Okay, where you came from before you came here, you didn't know the difference between good and evil. The closest that we got to that was seeing this disagreement between the guys that became the fallen angels, and this argument that was going back and forth. And we witnessed that, and we weren't really sure what to make of it. And so God said, okay, well, at least you didn't follow that guy down that path. I tell you what, though, why don't you go down to earth and experience it there? And we'll take care of, if you keep your estate and you keep your righteous, you seek for righteousness and you try to do very best, the 2 commandments I've often talked about, right? It'll be okay. And you'll get back and you'll have had the experience, but you didn't follow that deceiver here. But this is what would have happened if you did. You're going to go down there and get your boots dirty. You're going to go down in the cow pasture and walk in the cow manure. All right? So don't feel bad. Just do the best you can. All right. Yeah, the bloodline is very important. Brandon Joseph, that's right. And that's another reason why the family of Jesus, you never hear from them again other than a very short period of time in Acts. Very short. Then you don't hear anything more about them officially. James was his brother who wrote the Epistle of James. And it's my feeling, I'm fairly certain that if not the actual John the Apostle, there were 2 apostles that were named John, right? There was John, who was the brother, they were James and John, the sons of thunder. And I talked about that in a video. And then there was this other John, right? I think that other John is Jesus' son. And I kind of show that in the Crimson Thread. And then again, I saw this question up there where somebody put up that thing in the Gospel of John where Jesus is on the cross. It says, "Mother, behold thy son, and son, behold thy mother." Okay, and it's because he was identifying that as his son. He was identifying John. So I think the Apostle John, the beloved apostle, was his son. I think there's evidence for that, both culturally and the way that things are talked about in there, and the fact that John had his father appeared to him in Revelation and give him revelation, right? The Alpha and Omega. It's just like I said the other night, the first person that he came to was his beloved wife, Mary. That would be absolutely normal. Not his mother. I mean, eventually his mom. His mom even came to sepulchre, according to the record, along with Salome and Joanna and Mary Magdalene. And his mother's called the other Mary or the mother of James, those kinds of things. But no, the first person he came to after his resurrection was Mary Magdalene, his wife, and that's absolutely normal. And then he gave the revelation of his ascension to the throne to his son John. And it's a bloodline. And yes, those kids had kids. That's historical. We can see that in the record in Josephus. Um, those kids came down, both he and his brothers, and all those people had children. And a lot of us are descended from those people today. And the institutions and the governments don't want you to know that. So that's where all this other stuff came from, because they don't want you to think about it. If Jesus is lying, if you knew who it was, you'd go to them for instruction, wouldn't you? Of course you would. Why go to somebody who assumes, like Paul, that he's somebody great? Now you'll say, well, Paul was visited by Jesus. Well, I don't think even the people, James, I don't think even believed that. But at any rate, the point is that who are you going to believe? You're going to believe a descendant of Jesus who has this sent down through their line and has the right to preach about their Father? Or are you going to believe somebody like St. Jerome or St. Augustine or Eusebius or Irenaeus, who are just struggling to develop the church so that it has power? I'll go with the family. Okay? I'll go with the family. All right, let's see. Makes sense as to why King Herod wanted to destroy Jesus and the entire bloodline. Right, April, you've got it. You've got it. That shows what was going on. And that's why you never hear about the family again in the Pauline epistles. You never. Why didn't Paul talk about Mary, the mother of Jesus, being a virgin and had Jesus without having sex with Joseph or whoever her husband was? Why didn't he talk about the other apostles, especially the brethren, which is mentioned in the Gospels, right? Joses, who I called Yossi in my book, who's, that's a nickname for Joseph. That's who Jesus really was. His name was actually Joseph while he was on the earth. Then there was Kepha. Then there was Yaakov and Judas. They're mentioned right there. And they're not half brothers or cousins. They were full brethren. Okay? Anyway. All right. But all that had to be subverted and hidden. And it's my understanding, a lot of people get upset with the Knights Templar and the development of the Masonic people. And Masons have a problem, and there are actually several different types of Masons. I've talked about that before, the difference between the Scottish Rite and the York Rite Masons. There are differences, and that's partly the reason why we had the Revolutionary War. But at any rate, that's another story. You had the Knights Templar, who actually were working under the Pope, if you remember. And they were to protect the pilgrims as they went back and forth between Europe and the Holy Land to do their pilgrimages. Well, then when the Crusades started and all that, and etc., at any rate, the Knights Templar, according to the record that we have, was doing excavation work in Jerusalem and discovered some things that to this day we're not exactly sure what they were, but it was very possibly some of the riches that were buried, hidden from the Romans when the temple was sacked. Apparently there's some of that. There were genealogical records, apparently, and the Knights Templar discovered, hey, this story of Jesus being born of a woman never having sex is not true. And here's this real genealogy, and they kept that secret amongst themselves. Okay? Well, when the Catholics found out that they had this information, they went to war with them. And it had to do with some of their banking practices at that time, too, because this information did corrupt them. I'll tell you it did. Because they figured they had an arrow or a sword to the Pope and to the King of France, okay, because of this knowledge. Let me see what we got here. Liza Jean, you're here. Great. Thank you. Hi, Liza Jean. So, they had this information, so they became enemies of the church. And of course, there was this huge thing. It had to do with, it was kind of the beginning of the Inquisition, and then the church, killed off all these Templars and other peoples that lived in France, just slaughtered them. Okay? And the Catholics conveniently forget about this history because they're saying, well, they were heretics. That's why they were killed. Why? So this whole thing moved down, and so today there's this big war between the Roman Catholic Church and Protestant Masons. Yeah, oh rats, de Molay, the Order of de Molay. Jacques de Molay was the head of the Templars, and the French Pope, or the French King, and the Pope crucified him, killed him. The history of the Catholic Church is not very, very nice, and there's no way that a righteous thing came from that. There's no way. And I'm sorry, Catholics. I've not wanted to say that publicly. I was a Catholic once. I was an altar boy, I told you. But I've studied, and there are Catholics who say, well, I've studied it too. And, it's obvious that Martin Luther was a heretic and a revolution, and he was involved in a revolution, It wasn't a Reformation, it was a revolution. No. He found out the lies. Indulgences, you're going to pay somebody to get yourself to heaven? And there's a lot more than that. Okay. And I've been hitting too hard on the poor Catholics lately. Frankly, I have a problem with all of traditional Christianity. I named them all the other night, didn't I? All right. So I don't mean to sound like I'm just picking on the Catholics, because I'm not. Yeah, Rome used religion as power control too. It had nothing to do with God. That's exactly right. See, Jesse studied this stuff too, and he and I have had some really good exchanges of information, and that's exactly true. And when this messianic movement was finally altered by Rome and by the Talmudic rabbis, and they had pretty much free reign. It was their way of uniting all of these different places, both the pagans and the Christians, under one place. That was really the purpose of the Nicene Council, and everything that happened was to unite under Constantine all those different. They brought in all the different religions. They brought them all in. And actually, Rome didn't have a problem with other religions. The problem with the Jews was the Messianic movement. That was the problem, because it was trying to oust Rome, and that's the leader of that was Jesus, which is why he was actually executed. Okay. Armchair Priest looks like he's got some good information there. He's telling BP Earthwatch, look into the Comforter in Judaism, the Advocate of Christ in Christianity, the Angelic Pope in Catholicism, the Mahdi in Islam, and Maitreya in Buddhism, all the same person. Well, I wouldn't say it's the same person. It goes back to what I've said several times about what Jesus Christ means. It's an office more than a person. You are to take upon yourself the name. How did I get in this religious discussion? You are to take upon yourself the name of Jesus Christ. What does that mean? It means you're Jesus Christ. Do you understand that? When a wife takes her husband's name, she becomes part of him. In effect, him, his other half. All right? So and this was the principle in Old Testament times and in ancient times. Let me see if I can think of an example. Well, probably the easiest one would be Jacob, when he's wrestling with God, and he gets done. He gets his hip hurt. But basically God, or the angel representing God at any rate, because that happens too. It's in the names. Somebody asked me the other night, what does it mean, Michael, Ezekiel, Uriel, all those different, well, Ezekiel's not an archangel, but at any rate, yeah, it's because they are part of the Elohim. They are part of God. And there's one of them called Peniel, which means the face of God. When you go talk to God, you're looking at that archangel is who you're really talking to. So who Jacob was wrestling, it may have not been God himself, but it was somebody representing him. And he was given another name, wasn't he? And what was Jacob's name given? What did they change the name to? Can anybody tell me what Jacob's name was changed to? Anybody tell me? I know somebody knows. Israel. Yeah, which means he is the Prince of God. In other words, he's God's representative. He's taken his name, Israel. He is the Prince of God. And I showed this the other night. Somebody tried to say it's Isis, Ra, and is God. And there's some ties to Egyptian from that, but the real Hebrew side of it is the Yod means he, the Shin and the Resh are the Hebrew word for prince, Sar, and El, of course, is God. So it is he is the Prince of God. He became the heir. He became God's representative on earth. And you, when you take God's name upon you, you become an El. Simplified for the Christians, when you take Jesus' name upon you, when you say, I'm taking Jesus Christ's name upon me, you're saying now that you are Jesus Christ. Do you understand that? Which is why the image of God is so important, that if you disrespect it, then you're not God's representative. And God will punish you for that because you claim that you had his name upon you. And then you didn't represent him well. I know that's deep, but that's the fact of the matter. Israel's a knockoff of Mizrahi. Well, I'm just going to, again, going back to that whole thing. There are different people in different cultures that have those positions. And as long as they follow the two great commandments, you can probably, listen to them, at least study them. I did. I studied Hinduism, for instance. I studied the Bhagavad Gita. I've read Buddhist material. Anyway. Okay. Oh, there we are, Darling Peniel. Yeah, you're the one I was talking about that says face of God. Peniel means face of God. Very good. There's another one, too. It's Suriel. Suriel is another one, and there's some question about which one is actually which, but yeah, that's okay. That's good. Okay. All right. Okay. If Jesus said, "My Father will send you another in my name," I guess that's the question here. All right, because you take that name upon you. Think about this. Think about this. Why is it that there's all this communication between God and the prophets and even the regular people in the Old and New Testaments? You're having not so much in the New Testament, but these almost supernatural experiences with God. These are testaments. These are testimonies. These are witnesses. Who's having those today? Have you ever asked about that? In your heart of hearts, why haven't you received a thing like Elijah had with God, or Abraham having God walk up to him in the plains of Mamre? Why haven't you ever had that? Or be like Moses and be called up to God where he appears, with a burning bush. The bush wasn't really burning, apparently. It was reflecting the glory of God at that point in time, and that's another story altogether. But these are questions you need to ask, and they're hard questions. Yeah, the Essenes are a good study, and like I said, Eisenman, that's what he gets into. The two books of his. I mean, he's got a lot of books. He's got one called I've got it right here. Let me show you these, because this will kind of give you what you need to know. Sorry, this is going to take me a minute to get down because I've got all this stuff on this shelf. It's really a bummer. My eyes have really gone bad in the last couple of years from looking at these phones close up. I even have to have a magnifying glass sometimes. I keep that handy. Yeah, it's bad. Okay, let me show you this. There are other books by Eisenman, but this is one of the first that came out. The Dead Sea Scrolls Uncovered. I think you got this, didn't you, Walter? Good start. It's not very long. It's about 270 pages, and you'll see that it's got the Hebrew from the scroll, and it's got the translation. There's the translation. Okay, so you can go through there, and it's not exhaustive. Okay, it's only a small group of the scrolls. I don't think any of the Psalms are in here, like I brought up the one that I particularly was talking to you about that I think Jesus himself wrote. But anyway, there's this book. This is a good one to get. You can get that online. And then, of course, I already showed you James, the brother of Jesus. This one will knock your socks off. It'll also beat you up because it's pretty lengthy. But very scholarly. He had a bunch of PhDs and PhD students working on it. And then there's this one here, the New Testament Code. I would recommend any of those books. He also wrote, he and Michael Wise did another one too that I don't recall the name of right now on the Dead Sea Scrolls. But probably the leading scholar on the Dead Sea Scrolls for years was a guy by the name of Vermes. And Eisenman knew Vermes and disagreed with him. Vermes wanted to move everything into the Maccabean period, but the internal evidence in the texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls did not all. Some of them did because they started writing these Dead Sea Scrolls during the Maccabean period, but a lot of them didn't have internal evidence for the Maccabean period. There was almost a separation of the scrolls into the first century period, because the information about, for instance, the Kittim, which were the invaders in the Maccabean period, was the Greeks, the Seleucids. In the first century, it was the Romans. And so when you see the internal information in the text of the Dead Sea Scrolls, you can see this change from the Seleucids to the Romans, which means what? It means that the Roman occupation was in basically the first century of first century. So from 0 to 1 AD on forward. So those internal evidences are more important than what Vermes said. It's not all in the Maccabean period. So that's just an example. But you'll get that when you read these things, and it takes some time. But if you really want to be honest with yourself, if you really want to study the history and the evidences, and not hang your faith on some preacher that's telling you what the scripture says, because you can't read it in the original language yourself or understand the culture. Take the time to understand the culture. Do take the time to understand the language. Do take the time to at least look at the evidence of these things, and it'll pay rewards. Oh yeah, you might say, I believe this, and I thought my salvation was based on this, and now I'm finding out, oh, maybe it's not. No, it's not that it's not based on that. It's that because you went that far, you're able to go a little further. That's not questioning your faith. That's being willing to get more truth. That's a good thing. Okay. Yeah, Jesus did. Steve Brody says Jesus affirmed the old covenant and brought in a new covenant, the golden rule: love thy neighbor as thyself. This is a great mystery. No. You're kind of right. Okay, he didn't bring in a new covenant. And I saw this argument too: that covenant and testament. Somebody was saying, well, testamente. Well, yeah, kind of. It actually has another word which I've talked about before, but the real Jesus didn't bring anything in new. You were told to take care of your neighbor in the Old Testament. Basically, that's what the Ten Commandments are. Don't steal from your neighbor, right? Don't kill him. Don't steal his wife. Treat him like you would treat yourself. Jesus just combined all that down. That wasn't new. Okay, that wasn't new. You're saying it was a new covenant. And people try to say, well, Jesus made a new covenant. Actually, he didn't. He was the restorer of the old covenant, is really what he was. And he even said, when he was called good, he says, don't call me good, only one's good, and that's the Father in heaven, not me. And James he calls him Lord, and I think that was somebody who put that in the manuscript later in the Epistle of James. The Jews did not call anybody Lord but God himself. So either James believed that Jesus was the Yahweh on earth, or He was making it in the form of master, which he could have called him rabbi, but master still works. Okay, Lord. Um, the word in the Greek is kurios there, which is used for God. Okay, it is. But I'm very suspect. That's one of the things in the Epistle of James I'm suspicious about. I don't think he called Jesus Lord. I don't think he did that. And neither would have Peter, the real Peter. He would not have done that. Nor Jude. Okay. Do the Dead Sea Scrolls not support the Bible? The Old Testament, yeah. The New Testament, no. The concept of Son of God is definitely different. The idea of the Savior is still God himself, not a person named Jesus or any other person, not any other man. Yeshua, used in the Dead Sea Scrolls, means God the Savior. It's not identifying some man. The Dead Sea Scrolls don't talk about a virgin birth. They talk about a hope of a resurrection, but they never say that Jesus was resurrected. But guess who else never said that Jesus was resurrected in the New Testament? Does anybody know? Actually, there were a few, but there's one guy who never said he was resurrected. Do you know who that was? I've told you before who it was. Wow, darling, is that right? Wow. Well, yeah, those types of things can happen. She's talking about that she fasted and went to pray to God. But anyway, James never mentions the virgin birth, nor actually nowhere in the from Acts to, and actually for that matter, two of the Gospels don't even say it. But no mention of a virgin birth in the sense of the traditional Christian idea that Mary didn't have sex but just miraculously got pregnant. Nobody says that in the New Testament anywhere except two of the Gospels, right? None of the Pauline letters, not Peter, not John, not the first, second John, not James, nothing. But I thought that was a sign. Why don't they talk about that? Because their concept of a virgin birth was not what Christians say it is today. That's why. It wasn't. It was just that he was a firstborn son, and they say that he was the firstborn, right? Son of man too, which was even more important. The son of Adam. Ooh, what are you going to do with that one? But at any rate, there was that situation there, and then the resurrection. Paul talks about the resurrection, but then he calls him Christ Jesus, not Jesus Christ. Why is that? All these things are hints about what was really going on there. James never talked about the resurrection. There was a little bit in Peter, a little bit there, but it wasn't the crux of their belief. And this is the case in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was a hope they had, but that wasn't the important thing to them. What was the important thing to them? I've told you. Righteousness and piety. Love God and love your fellow man. That was the issue. And they didn't want to spend time on this other thing. They wanted to change men's hearts and souls. They didn't want them to be saved in their sins. Where'd that come from? Third chapter of Genesis. Adam and Eve fell. God curses them and all this. And he curses, actually he doesn't curse Adam. He curses the serpent, he curses Eve, and then he curses the earth for Adam's sake. He doesn't curse Adam. That's very important to understand. And then what does he say? He says, I'm going to put the cherubim, and the flaming sword to guard every way of the tree of life, that they do not put forth their hand and eat of the fruit of the tree of life and do what? Live in their sins forever. These correspondences are very important. Here I am talking about religion. I thought we were going to talk about politics and all this other stuff. Oh boy, okay. In the New Testament, was never a question of Jesus' virgin birth because it just meant he was a firstborn. You're saying it was insulting not to mention a question such things. Absolutely not. See, that's another misunderstanding of the culture. As a matter of fact, the tokens of virginity are talked about in the Old Testament, and they were even used by the Jews of the first century. Do you know what the tokens of the virginity are? That the hymen's still in place. And then there's some others, but that's the major one. Of course they were talked about, because you couldn't be a firstborn, right? Unless, I mean, if there had been a child before that, then you're not a firstborn, and you can't have the birthright. You lose the birthright. Remember the story of Jacob and Esau. Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of porridge, but he had the birthright. This was the issue. The concept of the virgin birth is talked about in Isaiah, and I talk about this in my religion series, is that he would be a firstborn son. And the other thing that people argue about, which I've covered a lot, of course, is his marriage situation. He could not be the Messiah if he was not married. And just because you think it's not mentioned in the New Testament, it is, and it's mentioned in the Old, about what the Messiah would have to do, and marriage is definitely one of them. It's right in the first and second chapter of Genesis. Oh no, he was too holy for that. He came here just to save our souls, and that, and you know, he did. I'm going to cover that again a little. I didn't want to do this yet. Okay, look, we're already in this subject matter, and I want my scotch. So let's get this out of the way. All right, let's just get it out of the way. All right, I'm going to finish this. All right. Again, I'm not telling you you have to believe what I say. What I'm asking is that you have the courage and the faith that God will carry you, and look into these issues for yourself. This is everybody says, well, wow, you know, we're in the time of the revealing. We're in the apocalypse. And what does it say about the apocalypse? All things shall be revealed. That which was hidden shall be known. You've been lied to for 2,000 years. I'm telling you that. You don't have to believe me. But you need to investigate it. And you need to see the evidences that are coming out. And Dr. Eisenman's work is one of the evidences. And I studied under him. And I studied on my own. It's been decades now. Does that mean I'm wholly right? Entirely right? No. Okay. So it looks like we're here, so I'm just going to do it, and then I can have my scotch. He got a circumcision when he was 8 days old. Why? If it was a new covenant that did away with the old covenant, why would he do that? Yeah, you're right, Jesse. Many people misunderstand that whole thing about not being, or they think they're going to be unscathed, and they're not. They're going to suffer, and they're told. I just said, right? You're going to come to earth, and you're going to wear your cowboy boots like the cowboy wears his boots, and when you go through the cow field, you're going to get cow dung on your feet. It's going to happen. Anyway, Jesus got it's even in the New Testament. It says he was circumcised when he was 8 days old. Well, why did his parents do that? If he was going to be the author of some new covenant, why did they even bother to do that? Because they said, well, that's not his job. There's no mention of his bar mitzvah. Does that mean it didn't happen? Well, I can guarantee you that if he got a circumcision, he got a bar mitzvah. It's not mentioned in there anywhere. Not everything that Jesus did is in the New Testament. Some things were taken for granted. Everybody knows. Look, in the Nazarene oath, that's not an oath, listen. When the Rechabites, their father Rechab said that nobody in his family would any longer drink wine or eat grapes. Not until the New World comes. Probably not even then. That was the beginning of the Nazarenes. The Nazirs, which is what Christianity became later. But you didn't have to. If you became a Nazarite, but you weren't part of the family of the Rechabs, you could still drink wine. Jesus did, so he wasn't a Rechabite in that sense. Nowhere in the covenant of the Nazarenes, Nowhere. If you find it, tell me where you find it. Nowhere in the covenant of the Nazarenes does it say that they should embrace celibacy. Nowhere. Because that violates the commandment to multiply. First of all, for this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. There's no exceptions. What happens with people that can't get married? There are, for whatever reason, a lot of these incels today, or these women that are not getting married. There are ways to take care of that. But the point is, this was a prophetic blueprint. So, you see a man, you figure he's married. Especially if he's staying away from other women. That should tell you something about Jesus. Not that he was celibate, something else was going on, but I'm not going to go there tonight. So the point is, it was taken for granted that he'd be married. He couldn't be called a rabbi if he wasn't married. And the scriptures are very plain to state that the Mashiach, the Messiah, must be married. Because if he didn't obey the first commandment, what makes you think he's going to obey any of the others? And Jesus said he fulfilled it to the letter of the law. Not one yod, jot, nor tittle did he disobey. So he got married. And there's no requirement for him to be celibate. That's a lie. That's a lie by people that were trying to destroy the royal line, and especially the Messiah's seed, of which some of you may be descended. And they don't want you to know that. Just like they're trying to tell you that you're from the apes, which they now know that's not possible. We're closer to the pigs than we are to the primates. It's all a lie. Because they don't want you to know who you are. And they want to degrade women. The first home of man, where life begins. That's really what that's about. But he was married. So I'll go ahead and give you some of these. And I've mentioned these before. Somebody wanted me to give all the references. By the way, again, if you don't understand Israelite culture, even if it isn't spelled out to you, you have to be able to understand what's going on. Sorry about that. Oh, my battery's going down. What do you know? Okay, you'll have to pardon me for a minute. I was waiting for this. I need to plug it in. I'll lose it. Let's hopefully that does it. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's start with the Gnostic Gospels. Why do I want to do that? Because even though they're 200, 150, 180 years past the events, and there are a lot of questions about the Gnostic Gospels, you have to, that's the Nag Hammadi codices that were found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. They were found actually prior to the Dead Sea Scrolls. But at any rate, yeah, there's a lot of questionable material about that, and you have to understand why the Jewish refugees fled Palestine and other places and headed to Egypt for safety. And then they started questioning what happened to them. Okay, and then so some other things came about. But the issue of Jesus being with his consort, kissing her on her mouth often, and loving her more than he loved all the other apostles is very evident, particularly in the Gospel of Philip, the Gnostic Gospel of Philip, and the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas. Just want to mention that. Most people say, well, that's not canonized scripture, so we don't have to believe that. Then you're denying the sun shining at noonday. And if you don't believe Jesus was married and you believe you're supposed to follow his example, then I suggest you not get married. Or if you are married, well, Paul says, of course, because you want to believe Paul. Okay, well, and Jesus said, of course, Paul, we're already married, so I can't divorce you except saving for the cause of fornication. So I guess I'm just stuck with you. What a horrible way to live your life. Genesis 1:2, I told you, the image of God. You're made in the image of God, male and female. And I just quoted to you again. What does it say? And for this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. That's a commandment. It's not an option. And it's not going to be ignored by the Son of God. Psalms 45:9. I've given that to you quite a long time now. It talks about God. David's talking. He says, God, my God, or God, thy God. So he says, there's God, but thy God above that. Read Psalms 9. It talks about the queen dressed in all of these wonderful things, and especially in gold of or from Ophir. Ophir was a place, and I talked about this the other night, east of Palestine, that had the finest gold around. It may have even been part of Solomon's mines. I'm not really sure, but it was a very fine gold. So this wife of the Messiah, not the spiritualized church. Now some people say, well that's Israel. No, while Israel was sometimes called the wife of God, that's true. By and large, it's the sons of God. Okay, Israel is my son, my firstborn son. Okay, but this thing in David, with talking about his God, talking about the queen and the gold of Ophir, you read that, and especially when it says his other honorable women. We're not talking about the church, not the spiritualized church, or even the spiritualized Israel. We're talking about something that you can see with your eyes. Not just a community, not just an ecclesia. Okay? Psalms 49, the queen stands there in gold of Ophir. Isaiah 6:1, his train fills the temple. It's word 7757. It's Shin Vav Lamed is the word for train. Yes, it can mean, like a train of a garment or whatever, but just like the word for tents, Abraham had many tents. What does that mean? He was a polygamist. That's pretty obvious. You had Sarah, you had Hagar, you had Keturah, and many other tents. So tents, when they said tents, it was a euphemism, or an idiom rather, a substitute for wife. Because the wife had the tent, not the husband. The husband visited the tents, but the wives actually had the tent, so it meant wives. It's a cultural understanding that you can miss if you don't know it. Right? So the train that fills the temple. It's another way of saying his posterity. How do you have posterity? Just because of the converts, the people that you're saving are going to be there with you. No, it's very specific culturally. Very specific culturally. Okay. Thanks for keeping things going, Liza Jean. I don't know what's happening there, but I appreciate it. Okay. He shall see his seed, and I've talked about this before in Isaiah 53. And when he shall make a sacrifice for sin, he shall see his seed. His posterity. And that's what happened. That's why I brought that up earlier. When he says to Mary, Mary, see thy son, son, see thy mother. That boy there, John, the beloved apostle, was probably his son, most likely. This prophecy in Isaiah is talking about that. Nobody else will explain this to you. At least not anybody I know. Somebody talked about some Murphy guy the other night. I'm not sure I know who that is, but anyway. John 2, 1 and 10. Now, some people say, and I mentioned this the other night too, this is the marriage at Cana, and that very likely, it could have been, one of just a friend or another family member or whatever. Well, first of all, the key is that Mary, his mother, is in charge of the wedding, and that's the way these cultural things went. The bridegroom's mother was in charge of the wedding, and the father of the bride was usually the one who would officiate as far as the exchanging of the vows was concerned, and they were very specific. So the ruler of the feast is most likely the father of whoever the bride is in this situation. The mother is the officiator over all of the administrative things that are going on, including once the vows are exchanged, and really the marriage is, in the case of Isaac, for instance, when he saw Rebekah coming, he just grabbed her and went into his mother's tent, and that was it. That was the marriage. And then Rebekah goes in and checks and makes sure, oh yeah, yeah, there's the blood from the hymen. Yeah, she was a virgin, so yeah, it's all good. Well, that would have been Mary's position with whoever she was officiating for. Well, the officiator of was the mother of the bride. The, the mother of the bridegroom was the one who sets the thing up and checks everything. And then once the proper, like I said, vows are made, uh, then the couple goes into the bridal chamber, does their thing, and then the mother of the bridegroom goes in and makes sure. And I'm sure there was a check before this, but that the hymen was intact, but because that's one of the tokens of virginity. But and there are ways that the hymen can be broken, so there are other tokens of virginity that they used in those days. But anyway, that's the main one. Then she would go in there, and yeah, there's blood on the sheet or whatever, or the bedding, so yeah. Then she'd come out and say, yep, it's all good. She came to Jesus. This is the story. She comes to Jesus and says, you know what? We're running out of wine. What are we going to do? And Jesus, he hasn't arrived at his time for being a minister yet. You know, he's kind of holding back. He says, gee, woman, mom. He could have called her but he says woman, right? At least that's the translation in the Greek. It's very possible he said which is mom. But anyway, he says, you know, it's really not my time to start doing this stuff. She says, oh, come on, honey. You know, what am I going to do? You know, this is the special time. Whether it was his marriage, I'm going to point out that it probably was, or one of his brother's marriage. Well, he goes and he does this. He goes ahead and the story is he changes the water to wine. I doubt that really happened that way. What this story is about is, again, somebody who didn't understand the actual culture allowed this to get through. Or maybe it did. Whichever. It's evidence that somebody was getting married. And the fact that Mary comes to Jesus shows that he's intimately involved in this thing that's going on. And I will maintain that the marriage of Cana of Galilee is actually Jesus' marriage. Okay. I've already said Isaiah 53:10. I've shown you the Tetragrammaton before. I guess I'll do that again now. This is another reason why. And I've shown you before, but let me go ahead and grab this. You notice I'm not drinking my scotch. This is really, I was looking forward to scotch at this point. I'm going to put the Tetragrammaton. But by the way, the rabbis don't like me writing this and then erasing it. If you don't understand why, I'm not going to try to explain it. But, okay, we've got the Tetragrammaton here. And I've explained this before. This is another reason why I'd be married. If he was the Yahweh, I'm going to say Yahweh because people get upset. You know, I said putting a U in Yahuwah isn't, God wouldn't have a U in his name. That's because they're trying to avoid the O because of the twin thing of being a destroyer or existing. So they try to avoid that. Yahweh's okay, we'll go with that. There it is. Right in the word is Psalms 9. Right in the word is Psalms 45, 9. God, Yah, my God, your son. Vav is nothing more than a matured yod. There it is right there. And what does it say? Male, female. Male, female. You don't get to be the Mashiach unless you have a wife. Sorry, can't happen because you're not in this image. You can't represent Yahweh on earth if you're not in his image. You must take his name upon you, which means you have to have a wife, men. Sorry, that's the way it is. And if you can't find a woman to marry, pray to God that he'll find you one. But if you're righteous in your heart, either he'll provide one in some way or another, or he'll make sure it happens at some point where it really counts. He's not going to, if you do your best, he's not going to hold it back from you, because when he created you to begin with, he created you male and female. You had a female counterpart. Some people say soulmate. That's all right with me. Okay. It's right in the word. All right. So The Tetragrammaton shows it. And I showed you the image, Zedem 6754 was the word, and it's this one here. This is the word for image, and it basically means a righteous man who judges God's judgment. In other words, he renders righteous judgment. That's the image you're supposed to be in. I've talked about that before. Okay? All right. That's kind of not to do really with the marriage part, but let's go to another one. Okay. That's probably I've probably given you too much already. Let's see. And of course, then there's the constant use of the allegory of marriage with the church, which I've explained with the community, right? Which does not his use of the allegory of that and the use of the allegory generally of marriage doesn't exclude the fact that he had a wife or substitute the church for his wife. It's just showing the importance of the relationship, that they're referring to a marriage because it's supposed to be that important, and they're putting it towards the church or the community as well, that it's supposed to be that kind of a relationship. It doesn't exclude him being married. Again, he couldn't have been the Messiah if he was not married. And there's no Nazarene covenant. I've already said this. There's no Nazarene covenant that says celibacy is a requirement in the Nazarene covenant. Matter of fact, I would think that it's prohibited. I would think that taking a vow of celibacy, now, for a short period of time, let's say that you're going to go out on a mission for God. Well, technically, when you've left your wife, you're alone, right? You're single. Kind of telling some things here I probably shouldn't, but the point is that you can make yourself a eunuch for the kingdom of heaven's sake. That doesn't mean cutting off your genitals. It doesn't mean that you're not married. It means that you will be separated from your wife for a while. That's a form of being a eunuch. Daniel was a eunuch, not by choice. He fell in the category that Jesus also mentioned, that you're forced to be a eunuch. Your testicles are cut off because the king who you're going to be in their court, they don't want you messing with his wives or concubines. So that's to make sure that you're going to make sure you're a eunuch, so you can't impregnate one of his wives and then mess up the royal line. And that's a tragedy. That should not happen. That's wrong that people do that to little boys or to young men, to make them slaves and to cut off their posterity. And there are curses for doing that to people, to cut off their posterity. There are curses that God does because of that. But Daniel was a eunuch, apparently. Jeremiah is the only time in the Bible anywhere that I can recall off the top of my head that was told not to marry a specific woman. He fell in love with this lady, and Nikola Tesla, and Nikola did it. I can almost understand why he stayed celibate. That's another story, though, Jesse. He tried, but he had some difficulties dealing with women, and that wasn't really his fault. But anyway, Jeremiah fell in love with this woman and wanted to marry her, and this was the only time that I know of anywhere, other than not marrying outside of Israel. I mean, that was prohibited. You don't marry the outside nation unless they become part of Israel. All right, that's a form of fornication. But in this situation, Jeremiah wanted to marry this lady, and God knew that, according to this story, that Babylon was coming in to destroy everything, and that she probably wouldn't survive. And so God said, "No, Jeremiah, don't marry her." Frankly, I think he already was married for reasons that would make sense, but I don't make that argument here. I'm just going to say, at that point, God knew that he didn't want to see Jeremiah turn to grief. I mean, I'm sure it still hurt him, but at least she wasn't his wife, and then he loses her to being killed by the Babylonians. That's the only time I know of. Quite to the contrary, Hosea was commanded to marry a prostitute, Gomer. Go read that story. So these prudish Christians are trying to deny their own inheritance and their own history and their own and the truth actually by saying that Jesus wasn't married. And as what got this whole thing started was I said that because of that, look at how many of these. I got to be careful. I can't use the word here. How many Catholic priests, for instance, have been um, implicated in things with young boys? And I don't mean to just pick on the Catholics. We've seen that everywhere. So much blasphemy. Let me see who this is. So much blasphemy. Bill six sect better. Okay, you tell me what blasphemy is. Tell me what blasphemy is. Do you know what the word blasphemy means? Well, I'll read you a scripture, and then you can take it from here. Jesus is talking. He says, "All manner of blasphemy shall be forgiven unto man, even blasphemy against the Son of Man. But the blasphemy against the Holy Ghost shall not be forgiven, neither in this world nor in the world to come." I'm not blaspheming against the Holy Ghost. The most I could be blaspheming against, the most, is Jesus himself. The Catholics will say you're blaspheming against the Virgin Mary. No. No. But I'm not blaspheming. Actually, you're the one that's blaspheming because you're denying the very things that would make Jesus the Messiah. I'm declaring his generation. Why do I say that? Well, it's right in Isaiah 53:10. Actually, it's a couple of verses down from there. It says, "And when he shall make a sacrifice for sin, he shall see his seed. And who shall declare his generation? For he is cut off from the land of the living." He can't identify his generation. He can't identify his seed. He can't say, "That's my son." He did do it on the cross. He pointed to John. But there's only one other person that I know of right now, who's declaring that he had posterity, that proves he was the Messiah. And you're looking at him right here. I'm testifying the fact. Take it or leave it. I'm declaring his generation. Who shall declare his generation, Isaiah asks? I will. Okay. And what else do we want to do here? I think that's enough. I think I've beaten that dead horse so long, and I'm really missing my scotch. Let me see here. Darling, you'll declare his generation as well. Good for you. Good for you. Okay. All right. Boy. I'm going to jump up here and see if there's some other real. Humans have gotten way too comfortable in this material where they don't want Jesus to return. He's going to destroy their delusion. Well, Brandon, you're really right. Brandon Joseph's saying that the humans have gotten too comfortable in the material world and they don't want Jesus to destroy their delusion. Yeah, actually, that applies primarily, however, to, I mean, because this world is supposed to be an Eden. God says there's enough. How does it put enough and despair. He doesn't say that there's supposed to be a control over the number of people here. That's not part of this. Is Eden. This is where all that's supposed to be experienced, and that you're supposed to enjoy life. Jesus said, I would that you would have life and that more abundantly, not less, but more. So it's not enjoying life, and especially even the food, the company of people. No, what it is, who he's addressing there, and who that whole thing is really talking about, are those like Harari, Klaus Schwab, Biden, people who run the Federal Reserve. You get my point? Psalms 82. Go read Psalms 82. That's who he's talking to. The rulers who do all this. They do not want Jesus to return. They'll say a lot of these, probably these like War of the Worlds things, and all that kind of stuff. That's actually them saying that when Jesus comes back, we're going to have to war against him because he's going to take away our place in nation, kind of like the scribes and Pharisees said about Jesus in their time. So they don't want God to come, so they're going to declare him an enemy when he appears. If they like a guy that comes back, if they present him as the Savior of the world, know that he is not. Because they will war against the real, because he's going to come and take away their place, their luxuries, their rule. But the guy that comes that they'll support will be the guy that they know will keep them in their place. That's how you'll know who's real and who isn't. No, not really, Walter. Gomer, no. Um, no, the name of the woman, it's sort of like today, Karen, calling somebody a Karen. I have friends that are named Karen. It kind of got out of hand. So to call any prostitute Gomer would not be a good idea. And Gomer actually was, you got to understand, a lot of these women are forced into these things because they've been, you know, they couldn't find a husband for whatever reason, or they were abused as a child, or it's the way to survive. No, I wouldn't use the word Gomer for a prostitute. I could tell you a story about that, but I can't because I want to protect somebody's privacy. But no, don't do that. To take the name of God in vain, there's only, if you go back, if see Mars Gold, I'm sure you know this because I've covered this in my many times. I can say goddamn all day long. That's not taking God's name in vain. Sorry, it just doesn't. There's only one name that's given in the Ten Commandments that you're not to take in vain. That you're not to, and what that means is that you take it upon yourself and then you disrespect it. That's really what it means by taking it in vain. Dr. Michael Heiser explains this very well. But there's only one name of God that you're told not to take in vain. And that's it right there. And if you know Hebrew, it's in the Exodus. It's right there. Now, I would also include the Ahaya, Asher Ahaya, which is I am that I am, or I will be whom I will be. I would include that as well because it's really the same thing, just in a different way. So this name here is the exact one you're not to take in vain. And I would say it's correspondence one that I just gave you, Ahaya, Asher, Ahaya. I would say those are the names that you're not to take in vain. God damn it, I hope you understand that. Pull my hair out, listen to Ron, you're saying all these horrible things, he's violating the... I know what I'm talking about. I'm not intoxicated yet. Hey, okay, build back better. No, don't push me. I'll have Liza Jean axe you out of here. No, I haven't started drinking yet. See, what you're seeing is you're seeing my real personality. I haven't had one swig of this yet. I had apple cider vinegar. Yeah, I guess it's a little fermented, but it's not an alcohol. I'm actually a very easygoing guy. What you see is what you get. When I get emotional, like I did the other night when I was talking about God coming to you, or if I talk about my wife Carol or my child that died, or these types of things. Yeah, a wife is a gift of God, a real wife. I mean, there are a lot of women out there that are, I think what they call them is what's the word? Hypergamous. There are a lot of hypergamous women out there, or women that have wandering eyes, just like the men do. But a wife that's true, like it talks about in Proverbs, that honors and loves her husband and all that, that's a rare thing, and that's a gift from God. And Carol, that's why I talk about her so much. Out of all the women I've been with, and I've been with a number of them, all in the correct circumstances, right? You may not agree with it, but I know biblically they were okay. The only one that I ever found to be in that situation was Carol, and I've shown you her picture the other night. I've shown her picture many times. But you're right, Jesse. Exactly. Exactly right. Gift from God. A good woman is a gift from God, and that's That's why, you don't take that for granted. And when you lose it, it cuts deep. It cuts really deep. So you'll see me get emotional like right now. But I'm a pretty happy guy. I'm serious much of the time. When I listen to these news things and when I see what our leaders are doing around the world today and how they're deliberately trying to decide Ukraine, what's happening in Ukraine? They're emptying the land out of white Christians. Do you understand that's really what that's about? It's obvious. They're even talking about drafting women now. Well, they've been doing it anyway. They're killing off these people. What are they preparing it for? They got Russia to do this, but what they're really after is there's something about Ukraine they're trying to do. Take their resources? Well, they've already got it. So what else is going on here? I could speculate, but I don't want to. I'd probably get thrown off YouTube. AZ Infidel, thank you. Yeah, if somebody's accusing me of being a wine bibber, it seems like to me they said the same thing about Jesus, didn't they? I'm in good company. So anyway, what I'm saying is yeah, I get serious. My kids sometimes see me and they can tell I'm deep in thought, or maybe I'm a little disappointed, or maybe even a little depressed. I get through that. I get that. This thing that happened in Turkey with us and in Syria, this horrible earthquake. I broke down and cried. I actually did. I'll tell you, I did. And I'm not so sure that was just an act of nature, because Turkey said some things to the United States ambassador about get out of our business, and then this happened. Yeah, it could be coincidence, but I doubt it. Most of the time, though, I'm pretty light. I enjoy people. I enjoy company. I'm very sociable. I can be introverted at times. Actually, I probably am an introvert, but the thing about introverts is when they get around people and they start enjoying the company, they kind of come out of their shell. And at least that's the kind that I am. Yeah, I know that legacy. Yeah, he has 666 in his name. I know. I saw that. Yeah. Um, and there's a drink out there, Monster drinks. That's actually 666. Those are three Vavs in the Monster drink. Did you know that? In case you didn't know, I'm telling you. I saw that first time I saw, pardon me, a Monster drink. I looked at it. Oh, that's three Vavs. That's 666. What the heck? Yeah. Okay. How long have we been going here? Almost an hour and a half. Oh my goodness. Now you know what happens when it starts to get to about an hour and 50 minutes. I lose the signal, and that happens almost all the time. So my guess is that that's an internal thing that the guys at YouTube or the IC puts out there. I told you I got banned off of a dating site. Did I tell you about that? I didn't do anything wrong. The IC just doesn't want me to find a lady that way, which I wouldn't want to do anyway. I did it at the behest of my doctor, who said, "Come on, right, do it." And I told him what was going to happen. He didn't believe me. So I actually went on there just to prove it to him. Sure enough, I got banned off of the dating site. And I know I didn't do anything wrong. It was because of my name. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, time to pick up the strats and relax. I got it right here. I got it right, Jesse. I'll show it to you. It's in the room here. Right, there it is, right there. I miss being in a band. I really do. That was some of the most fun I ever had. Was that? So especially when you play in a band with an audience or with a crowd, there's just something about the energy exchange. You actually play better. Isn't that funny? 10-4. Yeah, you actually play better when you get that feedback. It's really funny. And I'm not the world's greatest guitarist. As a matter of fact, I've lost a lot of my ability because my injuries in my arm and my hands. I lost my bicep. I think you know about that, and it affects all of that. At any rate, yeah. Okay, let's see here. Why do the Indians puff tobacco? Yeah, yeah, probably good reason. I prefer my Epiphone's okay. Yeah, I mean, they're all any guitar is good. I just, I played on a Stratocaster. I think I told everybody I played on it was a white one. I bought a '68 Stratocaster in 1970, And I had another guitar. It was it was made locally. It was called a Kappa Continental, and very nice guitar. Actually, the action on the Kappa Continental um, was as good as the Stratocaster, I thought, but it had a different tone than the Stratocaster did. So I'd use it for certain songs, bread mostly. When I'd play bread songs, since I didn't have a hollow body guitar, I'd use the Kappa Continental to do bread songs like "If," um, "Make It With You," stuff like that. And the Stratocaster I'd use for things like Hendrix, uh, um, Grand Funk Railroad, Chicago, um, a lot of those things. Okay, you had to rebuild your Gibson. Yeah, I've heard that can happen. Yeah. Okay. Ceremonial smoking. Yeah, I know. I've been. I don't know if you know. I've like I said, I've done a lot of things, and one of the things I've done is I've been to Indian sweat lodges, many of them actually. I knew and I won't tell you the whole story, other than to say that yeah, I've been to Indian sweat lodges, but I never did that, and I know it was kind of looked down upon by the Native Americans that were there that I didn't want to do that, but my lungs have just never been able to handle it. Even though you don't have to necessarily inhale it, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. I don't object to other people, by the way. I don't think it's a good thing to do to yourself, but I don't consider it to be evil or anything like that. Um, that's all I'll say about that. Okay. Uh, yeah, Grand Funk Railroad. Yeah, I played a lot of their songs. I'm Your Captain, a bunch of others. I can't recall right now. Oh yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, that's right. A good guitar picker can make just about anything sound good. I knew David Allan Coe personally. I don't know if you know who David Allan Coe is. You probably do, BP Earthwatch. I met David Allan. I had a friend. Anyway, I had a friend that knew all these guys: Johnny Cash, David Allan Coe, um, Chris Christopherson, um, Willie Nelson. They'd come and visit this friend of mine. And David Allan Coe, he had a great voice, but he was a lousy guitar player. uh, so anyway, his band would do real well, but you're right. A good guitar player, a good guitar picker can use just about any guitar and then go from there. I really have to have a good action on the guitar though, and you know what I mean by that, Jesse. Uh, I have a grandson that I helped to get into guitar playing, and he's really progressed. He has the capability to be as good as Jimi Hendrix. Oh, really? I know. David Allan Coe was. I could tell you some stories about him, but I'm not going to. I'll just say that he doesn't really know who his friends are. I'll just leave it at that. But at any rate, this grandson of mine, I got him started in it, and he's really taken off. He could be as good as any of the rock stars very soon. Very soon, he could be as good as them. He even does some stuff that comes close to doing Joe Bonamassa type picking. He's really amazing. But at any rate, yeah, he started off in an acoustic guitar that the action, you know how they can get. The cheaper ones, you got that. You press the strings down, you can never get them all. Um, but then he moved over. He has some really nice electric guitars now with some really nice action, a lot like my Stratocaster. And I need a good action on a guitar, or I can't play it very well. Okay, all right. Well, I've been going now for, like I said, it's been almost an hour and a half. No, it has been an hour and a half. It's coming up on 2 hours. Useless knowledge. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. You say Yeshua wasn't God. He told us so. See, this is another thing that's going to be difficult here. Um, that's why I mentioned the James probably in the Epistle of James probably where he puts Lord in there, calling Jesus Lord. Um, if he was referring to his brother, he probably wouldn't do that. Nowhere in the Dead Sea Scrolls does the whole concept of being the Son of God which would be God himself too in a way, right? It is not looked at in the Dead Sea Scrolls, even in the period of the first century when Jesus would have been around. Uh, God is up there, or, you know. So yeah, you're not mistaken about that, but we are still supposed to be his representative in his image, as I've explained. So if we're going to be in his image to judge righteously, then we also take this name upon us. And it's actually a family. Who said that? Useless knowledge. It's actually a family. This is a family. But tonight's not the night to talk about that. Okay. I got to hang out with Ted Nugent, Rick Logsdon. Wow, that must have been fantastic. I really like Ted Nugent. I liked his music. I like the fact that he's a real man, and yeah, I like him a lot. Oh, thank you, Jesse, to say it's been a good 90 minutes to spend with friends. Now, here, who's this? Ridge Runner 907, go Potter go. You mean leave, or do you just mean keep talking? No, we need to shut this down. I think we need to. I don't want YouTube to shut it down, and then I won't be able to get the video uploaded. That's what happens, and it's a big mess to have to fix it. All right, one last thing, because I said I was going to cover it. First of all, don't forget to look in the description box below and watch Redacted on the financial situation with the banks. Very important. The bail-ins, really, that's here. It's happening now. How extensive it'll be, I don't know. They're probably going to ease into it, but I'm not a financial guy. I'm not telling you how to handle it. Just be aware of it. Find out how you can handle it from people that are a lot more knowledgeable on financial situations than I am. But the last thing I'm going to mention real quick before I go, because this was one of the things that hung over from the other night. There was somebody there, a remnant seed, and Mimi something or other, and they were really, really upset about my subject matter on Jesus being married. I understand that to an extent, but I also understand what the requirements were for the. Oh, hey, Debbie Donovan. Hi, Debbie. How you doing? I thought that was you when it came up. What do you know? All right. Yeah. Hi, Debbie. Debbie was a guest on my program a couple of times. Okay. One nightcap, and then we had one on a Democrat who liked Trump, I think was the subject matter. Anyway, so these people got upset, and I understand that, because to go against this tradition that's been around for 2,000 years and misunderstanding the whole concept of Mashiach and what that was all about, a lot of subterfuge there. Like I've pointed out, the difference in the genealogies in Luke and Matthew, for instance, there's no excuse for that. There's something else going on. So what this is about that I want to address is, and this came from that individual also that I think we were talking about before, and I'm not going to name them for reasons I just don't feel like it. But there are those people that believe that Jesus wouldn't marry here because the fallen angels came here to take wives, and so Jesus wouldn't do that. See, this is the problem when you don't understand, when you read things superficially, you don't go back to the original languages, and also when you don't understand the context. The fallen angels, Genesis 6, they left heaven. They were kicked out of heaven because first of all, they were seeking to take God's place. That was the first thing that happened. And then the other thing is they made this vow between us, where we go one, we go all. Have you ever heard that? Made this vow amongst them, because none of them wanted to take the full responsibility. We're going to go down and take wives of the earthlings, of the humans. So in the estate that they had in heaven, as they were in heaven, wherever that is, okay, they came here in that form and took the daughters of men as wives, and caused all kinds of genetic difficulties in the process. This is kind of going. The explanation I'm going to use is not quite right, but it'll give you it'll be a bestiality thing. It'd be like you trying to have sex with a dog, and what that could cause. Okay, so they came in the estate that they were in and took wives of the daughters of men while they were in that estate. They were still in that form. Jesus didn't do that. It explicitly says that he took upon himself the seed of Abraham. He became a man. He didn't come down in his heavenly form. Oh, it was there, but it's sort of like your spirit being in your body, okay? He came and he entered into Mary's body in that embryo, in that zygote, and was born of a woman, which the fallen angels were not, born of a woman and became Abraham's seed. So he became a man. So now, him taking a wife does not violate the law like the fallen angels did. And then you got to wonder, well, okay, you take this to another level. Gee, the Holy Ghost giving Mary a baby in the first place. Is that a fallen angel? So the people that were trying to stun me with this accusation, this interpretation, you didn't really. No. You're calling me a heretic. You're calling me a blasphemer. Well, I give you a hate in return. Not a hate, like I hate you. A hate. It's the number 8. And it looks like this. Comes in this side, and it goes right back at you. You don't want me to put a hate between you and me. You really don't want that. You really don't want that. Yeah, very good, Jay. And we talked about being born from above again, as being what it really means, not born again in the sense of that, but born from above. Yeah, and there's another aspect of that, Jesse, I didn't cover last night. You need to be a literal son or daughter of God. A literal son. You got to be a begotten son or daughter. The mods are being very kind tonight. Well, Jesse, I stir up all this. Jesus said, I have not come to bring peace, but a sword, to the dividing asunder of father, mother, not father, mother, father, son, mother, daughter, this person, that person, because, people don't want to look for the truth. They want to accept tradition, and they want to accept their comfortable little area or what their little sermon preacher tells them. So I know I'm causing this, and it's not my intention. And I don't think it was really Jesus' intention either. It's just a cause and effect. I'm talking about something that is obvious, and that the people have had the wool pulled over their eyes about all this, about who they are, telling us that we're from monkeys, telling us, about history that didn't happen. I'm an historian. I can look at stuff and say, nah, that's not the way it went. So I've been fortunate to be blessed with seeing these things. A lot of people aren't, and they believe that defending error, defending their faith is okay because they don't consider it to be error, and they would never even look at it as such. Well, I've been blessed not to be caught in that situation. All right, I got to go. We're going to lose it here. We're right there where we lose the signal. So before they do that to us, thanks for coming. I just wanted to make sure I came back tonight. I felt bad that, I get so adamant sometimes, and I don't mean to make it look like I'm angry, but I'm trying to be emphatic is really all I'm trying to do. But I do get very upset with people attacking the man-woman relationship. We're in so much trouble with this. So much trouble. And if we don't wake up, if we don't start to understand what they're doing to us, we're not going to make it through this, ladies and gentlemen. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground, a situational awareness on high. Again, go to the description box, look at the situation with um, the Morrises on Redacted talking to you about this bank bail-in that's ongoing right now. And you need to find out how to deal with that. I'd say right now that's probably the number one thing. Of course, a lot of other stuff happening too, but we've talked about all that a lot of time. Prep, pray, and stay out of the way. I'm not saying don't stand up for the truth. I'm not saying don't get involved, but I'm saying, be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. And it's okay to defend yourself, but don't go looking for trouble. You just might find it. Y'all take care. Thanks for being here. I hope that was of some interest to everybody. And I hope you had a good time. And I said I wanted to have some of my scotch. Cheers to everybody. That's really good. One of the tricks with scotch, as I've told you before, is that you let it sit for, let's say it's 12 years old. You let it sit open air for 12 minutes before you start to drink it. Sometimes it helps to put a little drop of water in it. This is straight. It has been sitting there during the entire time we've been talking, so it's very well aerated. You can see the oil there. I don't know if you can see the oil. That shows you how good it is. It's got oil in the glass. So have a great night, everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.